Welcome to this week's video email titled Every Child Has a Musical Story. You may have noticed that my usual Saturday email never appeared last week. In fact, I did write it and I even recorded the accompanying video, but then I made the unusual decision not to send it. Something just didn't feel right. The message wasn't saying what I wanted it to say. Looking back, I'm quite glad I listened to that instinct, because the extra thinking time led me to reflections that I'd like to share with you today. Maybe I just needed a bit more time to crystallise my thoughts. It does mean that this week's video email is just slightly longer than usual. I'm currently right in the middle of the busiest examining season of the year. For those of you who don't know, one of my roles is examining children, young people, and even some not so young ones too, as they perform on their instruments or sing. It's one of the great privileges of my working life. Every examination is different, every performance tells a story, and every candidate brings something uniquely their own into the room. Recently, though, I found myself reflecting on another aspect of the exam experience, and that's the music itself. Over recent years, the examination board I work with has made a real commitment to broadening its syllabus. Alongside the traditional repertoire, it's now a much wider range of musical styles, genres, and influences for candidates to choose from. Sitting on the other side of the examination table, I can hear the difference that this makes. I hear children performing music that resonates with them, music that reflects sounds they know, the cultures they experience, the music they listen to at home, and the musical language that forms part of their everyday lives. And somehow, I think I hear them in the music more clearly too. As someone who sat the very same type of examinations many years ago, I can't help appreciating how, whilst the high standards remain exactly the same, the musical world has become richer. I think the tide is beginning to turn, and I find that enormously encouraging. It's also made me reflect once again on a question that has stayed with me throughout much of my music teaching career. Why has there so often been such a gap between the music children experience in their everyday lives and the music they encounter in educational settings? Of course, I'm certainly not suggesting that the musical concepts we teach, such as pulse, beat, rhythm, pitch, dynamics, timbre, musical structure, etc., aren't important. Quite the opposite. These concepts are the building blocks of musical understanding and remain just as important as they always have been. My concern has never been with the concepts themselves. They're timeless. It's been with the narrowness of the musical examples we've sometimes chosen to illustrate them. Why shouldn't children learn about pulse, rhythm, or dynamics through a much broader range of musical experiences? After all, every child arrives at school already carrying a musical story. Long before we ever teach them, music has already begun shaping who they are. For one child, it might be nursery rhymes and lullabies. For another, it could be Bhangra at family celebrations, gospel singing in church, a grandparent's folk songs, Bollywood film music, football chants, or simply the music that has become part of their everyday life. Every child has already begun their voyage into music. The question isn't whether they have musical experiences, it's whether we choose to begin our teaching by recognising them. For me, one of the most powerful ways of saying to a child, "I hear you," is to recognise that the music they already know has value. Not because we stay there, but because it becomes the starting point for discovering everything else. I don't believe we need to choose between musical excellence and musical inclusivity. I believe each is strengthened by the other. Music is, without doubt, one of humanity's greatest ever achievements. Every culture has created it, every community has shaped it, and every generation has passed it on. It comforts us, celebrates with us, tells our stories, strengthens our identities, and helps us make sense of the world around us. If music is such a fundamental part of being human, then surely our children deserve to experience something of its extraordinary breadth. That thought has stayed with me for many years. In fact, it's the reason I created the Musical Diversity Alphabet as an instant music teaching resource. It grew out of a simple ambition to create bite-sized, engaging opportunities for adults and young children to explore the remarkable breadth of music together. A kind of lucky dip voyage of discovery for young and old alike. The musical learning hasn't changed. The musical world has opened up. The Musical Diversity Alphabet simply invites us to explore more of music's extraordinary richness together. I wanted to spark curiosity, to encourage children and the adults learning alongside them to ask questions such as, what is this music? Why does it matter? Where does it come from? How does it help people express themselves, connect with one another, and understand the world? The musical concepts are still there. In fact, they're woven through every single letter of that alphabet. They simply sit within a much broader collection of musical experiences, celebrating examples from across our wonderfully diverse world. Over the coming weeks, I'd love to share more of that journey with you. Sometimes I'll write about something I've heard while examining. Sometimes it'll be inspired by my work with the children and their teachers. A conversation, a piece of research, a current event, or simply something that has made me stop and listen a little more carefully. My hope is that together we'll continue discovering that music is far bigger, richer, and more fascinating than any one tradition, genre, or culture can ever reveal. Because every child deserves not only to learn music, but to discover the extraordinary world of music that belongs to us all. And perhaps that journey doesn't only belong to children. Perhaps it belongs to all of us. My hope is that together we'll become just a little more curious. We'll listen more widely, and in doing so, we'll help the next generation discover the extraordinary richness of music in all its many forms. I'd love to explore that journey with you in these emails over the coming weeks. In the meantime, I'll leave you with a question. What musical story might you share with others over this coming week? You never know where that might take you. Wishing you a week of musical discoveries, and many thanks for watching through to the end of this video. And I hope to see you in the next one.